Virginia District Court for County of Washington State District is now back in session. The Honorable Judge Simpson presiding.
You may be seated. Come back out.
The 148th District Court is back in session, and right away, the air is tense. The judge is about to rule on competing bond motions. One side wants it reduced, the other wants it denied entirely. This isn't just about money or rules, it's about risk, responsibility, and the community's safety. From the start, the stakes are clearly high. The prosecutor argues that the defendant should not be allowed to walk free due to the seriousness of the charges. Under Michigan law, bond can only be denied in specific cases, and the judge reads the rule aloud to make that clear. The decision hinges on whether the court believes the defendant is likely to flee or cause harm. These aren't just legal formalities about real lives potentially being impacted. The courtroom quiets as everyone leans in. The judge reminds all present that the law permits bond denial when there is strong evidence and risk involved. This is no ordinary bond hearing. It's the start of a much deeper examination. Rights begin to clash. One wrong move here could end in tragedy. And as both sides lay out their arguments, the court prepares to weigh danger against due process.
There are, in essence, competing motions regarding the defendant's bond. The defendant is asking that his bond be reduced, and the people are asking to the contrary, that his bond be not effectively, but denied in this case. The court rule is very clear and very specific in terms of when the court can deny bond to an individual. There's a statutory section which applies to it, as well as a court rule. Specifically, with reference to the court rule, the court may deny bond to a defendant that is charged with criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, armed robbery, kidnapping, with the intent to extort money or other valuable thing. Thereby, if the court finds proof of the defendant's guilt is evident or the presumption great, unless the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the defendant is not likely to flee or present a danger.
As the hearing unfolds, the judge begins to share some disturbing concerns. A key issue is the defendant's access to youth. Through his leadership role in the church, the prosecution argues this position was used to build trust and create access, which the judge calls classic manipulation. The court expresses deep concern over what it sees as calculated behavior-building relationships, only to exploit them later. These are not accusations the court takes lightly. When the setting is one of authority and faith, the silence becomes even heavier. The court underscores how fear and shame can trap individuals into not reporting what happened. And in such environments, silence becomes a tool used against victims. This is where the judge begins seeing a pattern. The judge acknowledges that such situations aren't accidents, they're often built over time. That deliberate buildup of trust, followed by betrayal, carries serious weight in this courtroom. When the judge describes it as predatory behavior, it becomes clear how serious the court views this. The courtroom is no longer just reviewing documents. It's confronting the real-world effects of broken trust and emotional damage. This is where the judge starts leaning heavily toward denial of bond.
Take a number of factors into account, and I've given, I think, each side an opportunity to respond to the court's inquiry as to what was going to be important in terms of the court's deliberation. People have done, both parties have done an excellent job in laying the issues that the court needs to decide before the court. I would say that the people's rendition of the statements and stories, at least the minimal synopsis of the statements and stories of the alleged victims in the case, are indeed compelling to the court. And one of the first inquiries that the court had was, as the court sees the whole thing, what really is a grooming and predatory behavior as you see each of these incidents. The court does take into account also that the defendant's position within the church and access to
A sharp turn when the judge addresses the updated charges. The original $3 million bond was set before several additional allegations were filed. Now, the court is reviewing everything again, this time with more alleged victims involved. The judge makes it clear this is the first time the court is analyzing the new developments with all current charges in play. It's not about punishing someone early, it's about making sure safety is prioritized while the case proceeds. Defense argues that the original bond was already high, but the court disagrees, stating it didn't reflect the full scale of allegations now presented. This hearing is about deciding if the defendant should remain free at all, not how high the bond should be. With new victims stepping forward, the judge sees this as a major shift. What was once viewed as one isolated event is now a potential pattern that changes everything. To deny bond based on what's been presented so far, the court is moving toward meeting that burden. This isn't just a legal technicality, it's a pivotal moment in the
cases where there are children involved and certain behaviors, threats, if you will, enticements, other things can come into play. What is also of note, something that the prosecutor brought up and I think does bear noting, is that the defendant's bond initially, when the initial charges were filed and the arraignment was set at the $3 million, the current bond that it is set at. Did not take into account the additional charges that came forth. So this is really, in essence, the first addressing a bond with the additional charges of the additional individuals.
The courtroom takes a sobering turn as the judge describes what it means for someone to live under the control of another. Situations where people are placed in roles that silence them, whether through fear, intimidation, or emotional pressure. The allegations suggest that those affected had to interact with the defendant the very next day in settings of trust and authority. Imagine sitting in a place of worship, watching someone in a position of power continue to lead while carrying those heavy accusations. The emotional weight of that kind of imbalance becomes a major point in the judge's thinking. The court recognizes the difficulty victims face in speaking up, especially when fear of backlash or disbelief lingers. These aren't just legal points, they're psychological scars. The judge says plainly that this silence is no accident, it's a design, a pattern. That kind of psychological pressure makes it harder for the truth to come out. And the longer the silence lasts, the harder it becomes to speak up. This part of the hearing reminds everyone that legal cases involve more than laws, they involve real lives. The judge's words reflect a deep concern for those who may be too afraid to talk. That concern begins to solidify the court's belief that bond should be denied. Next voice now. The focus shifts